November of 2020. Lake Samsonvale, just north of Brisbane, stretched out like glass under a warm Queensland sky. The kind of day when danger feels impossible. Out on that water, 54-year-old Jacqueline Davidson paddled alongside her husband, Graeme Davidson, a decorated former Army Major with years of training under his belt. To anyone watching from shore, it was the picture of peace. Two people in a kayak drifting into the middle of the lake. No shouting, no struggle, no hint of trouble. But in a matter of hours, Jacqueline would be pulled from that same water lifeless. Officially, it would be logged as an accident. Unofficially, it would become the start of a case that would take nearly 5 years to unravel. For months after Jacqueline's death, the official story stayed simple, a tragic mishap on the water. The couple had been alone. Graeme Davidson told police his wife had suddenly panicked, toppled from the kayak, and slipped beneath the surface before he could save her. It might have ended there, but detectives don't close their eyes to small details. Behind the polite condolences and routine paperwork, they started to see cracks. The timeline didn't sit right. His story changed in subtle ways. And then there was the matter of a mobile phone that simply vanished along with whispers of life insurance policies worth more than 1 million Australian dollars. What began as an accident report was slowly morphing into something far darker. About 1 hour into that calm November paddle, something strange happened. Graeme Davidson's mobile phone dropped off the network. No calls, no messages, no GPS trace. It was as if the device had fallen off the map entirely. Davidson would later tell investigators the phone must have been lost in the lake, a simple accident during the chaos. But to detectives, it was more than a missing gadget. It was the first hard red flag. Phones hold stories, exact locations, the timing of messages, even the order in which events unfold. Losing that phone meant losing a digital witness that could confirm or contradict his account of what happened that day. And the fact it disappeared so early in the trip set off alarm bells inside the investigation. When police began pressing Graeme Davidson for details, his version of events didn't just have gaps, it kept changing. In one telling, Jacqueline's foot was caught in underwater weeds, holding her under. In another, he claimed she was still conscious when he reached her. Sometimes he said he dove straight into the water to pull her up. Other times, he admitted he stayed in the kayak before helping. Each adjustment might have seemed small on its own, but to experienced detectives, shifting stories are like warning flares. They suggested a man trying to shape the truth as he went, testing which details might stick and which ones he needed to bend. And every new version made them more certain there was more to this accident than met the eye. 3 years before Jacqueline's death, Graeme Davidson allegedly made a comment to a friend that would later echo through the courtroom like a warning no one had heeded. If she ever left me and took half my pension, I'd kill her and move to Thailand. Back in 2017, it was brushed off as a tasteless joke, the kind of thing said in passing and quickly forgotten. But once Jacqueline drowned, those words took on a sharper edge. For prosecutors, it became a glimpse into motive and mindset, a sign that resentment and financial fear were already brewing years before that kayak ever touched the water. For the defense, it was nothing more than a flippant remark taken wildly out of context. But in the hands of a jury, such words can stick like glue. Not long after Jacqueline's death, Graeme Davidson began filing insurance claims. The first was for 230,000 Australian dollars approved on paper, but quickly flagged by investigators. The second, far larger, was for $950,000. That one never went through. Prosecutors would later argue these were not the desperate actions of a grieving husband, but the calculated moves of a man who saw his wife's death as a financial windfall. Combined, the payouts would have totaled more than $1.1 million, enough to erase debts, fund a new life, and perhaps make that old Thailand remark a reality. To detectives, the pattern was clear. This wasn't just about a tragic day on the water. It was about money, big money, and whether someone was willing to kill for it. As doubts piled up, the file on Jacqueline Davidson's death was quietly pulled from the archive. Detectives weren't just reviewing notes, they were rebuilding the entire case from the ground up. They returned to Lake Samsonvale, re examining the spot where the kayak had drifted. They brought in forensic specialists to study water currents, drowning timelines, and even the likelihood of an experienced ex soldier failing to rescue someone in calm conditions. New witnesses were interviewed. Some recalled seeing nothing unusual. Others remembered details that seemed minor at the time, but now felt important. And in every briefing, the same question kept coming up. With perfect weather, a fit husband, and no sign of injury or panic beforehand, how did a strong, healthy woman simply drown? To the team, the answer was starting to look less like chance and more like design. In May of 2025, after nearly 5 years of simmering suspicion, detectives made their move. Graeme Davidson was arrested and charged with murder, specifically under domestic violence provisions, along with fraud and attempted fraud. The news hit like a shockwave. Here was a decorated former Army Major, a man once trusted with lives and leadership, now accused of killing his own wife for money. Former colleagues were blindsided. Neighbors who had once waved to him at the letterbox suddenly avoided eye contact. Police said the case had taken years because they wanted it airtight. Every financial record, every inconsistent statement, every piece of forensic data had to line up before they put cuffs on him. And when they finally did, the Quiet Lake tragedy was no longer a footnote. It was front page news across Australia. The courtroom was tense, packed with reporters and curious onlookers. For the first time, both sides laid their cards on the table. The prosecution painted Graeme Davidson as a calculating killer, a man who planned a secluded kayak trip, staged a drowning, and moved quickly to cash in on insurance payouts. They pointed to the missing phone, the shifting stories, and the ominous remark from years earlier as proof of intent. The defense pushed back hard, calling the case entirely circumstantial. No witnesses, no physical evidence tying him to foul play. Just suspicion layered on coincidence, they argued. The judge called the evidence neutral, not overwhelming enough to keep Davidson behind bars before trial. He was granted bail under strict conditions. A surety of 250,000 Australian dollars, daily check-ins with police, a GPS ankle monitor, surrender of his passport, a curfew and strict travel bans. Graeme walked out of court that day, but he was far from free. Graeme Davidson insists he is innocent. To him, Jacqueline's death was nothing more than a freak accident, a tragedy that could happen to anyone on the water. But when the trial begins, the Crown will be relentless. They will ask the jury to see the missing phone not as a lost item, but as a deliberate erasure. They will frame the shifting stories as the careful adjustments of a man who knew the truth would not serve him. They will argue that the life insurance claims, totaling over $1.1 million, were the true motive behind that kayak trip, and they will remind jurors of a remark made years earlier, one that now sounds chillingly like a prophecy. The defense will counter with a simple theme: no proof, no crime. Without eyewitnesses, without forensic certainty, they will urge the jury to reject what they call theory dressed up as fact. In the end, the case will hinge on whether 12 strangers believe that what happened on Lake Samsonvale in November of 2020 was an unforeseeable accident or a perfectly staged murder.